Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to be taking some of the textures from the last episode and we'll combine those with some new textures so that we can make a few buildings, like this one here. And as always, you can find a link to both of these PDF files down in the description. However, before we get started, I just want to quickly run through how these go together. So, the idea is that we can take one of the existing wall sections and cut that to whatever size we like. And if we would like to add an upper floor, we can do a similar thing again, but this time also cutting away the wooden part along the bottom. Then we'll need to find a suitably sized gable piece, that's the little triangle at the top, and do the same thing with the bottom beam. And then simply glue all of those onto a piece of cardboard. So, as you can see, this should allow us to make buildings of all sorts of different shapes and sizes. But that being said, for this video I'll be making a fairly small house, simply because it's easier to fit on the screen. So yeah, let's get started. Okay then, so here's one of the wall sections from episode 43, and in this example I'll just cut out a piece that has two of the upright beams, and I'll also trim the top beam exactly to size. Next, I'll take the smallest of the triangle pieces and trim the bottom to size. Then we'll need a piece of corrugated cardboard, double, single, it doesn't really matter, and glue our pieces into place, making sure that the very tips of the triangle line up with the outside edges of the wooden planks. So, something like this. Then, once that's dry, we can cut that to size, though obviously we'll need two of these, one for each end. Okay, next we'll take one of the wall textures again, and this time I've cut out a piece that has a door and a window. Then we'll take a piece of thin cardboard and glue the texture onto that. And once again, when that's dry, we'll cut that to size, and we'll also make a similar back piece to go along with it. Right then, so here's all of the wall pieces that we just made, and all we're going to do is run a line of hot glue along the edge of one of the end walls and glue either the front or the back wall into place. And as you can see, I also like to run a line of hot glue along the inside corner just for some added strength. Then we'll just need to repeat the process until all four walls are stuck together. So yeah, that's all I'm doing here. And when we're done, this is how it should look. So that's the main part of the house finished. Now, to make the chimney, we'll take this texture and we'll be gluing that to some 5mm thick foam core. And once it's fully dry, we'll cut that to size. Then we can take our little building and simply decide where we want the chimney to go. So here I am marking the back at a height that looks about right. Then cutting it to size with a sharp knife, applying some glue to the reverse side, and sticking the two chimney pieces back to back. Then I like to place a book on top, just so that the whole thing dries nice and flat. Okay then, once that's fully dry, we can trim that to size with a sharp knife. Like so. And before gluing it into place, I'm just going to check to see how it looks, and I think the top part is still a little bit too long here, so I'll go ahead and I'll trim a little bit off the top. And there we go, that looks much better. Next, we're going to cut a strip of the stone texture from episode 1, cut that to the same width as our chimney. Then we can apply some glue to the back and wrap that around the outside to cover up the exposed edges. And that should result in something that looks like this. Next, we'll take this texture here, glue that to some thin cardboard, and cut that to size. However, we'll also need to score it along these lines here, and these lines here, so that we can fold the whole thing into a little box shape, like this. Then we'll need to apply some glue to the top of the chimney, and also inside this little box, and stick the two together. Then it's just a simple matter of applying a tiny spot of hot glue in the corner here and folding down the side, And you really don't want to be using a lot of glue for this, as the last thing you want is the glue to start seeping out from underneath the bottom of the cardboard. Anyway, when we're done, this is what we're left with. So, all we'll need to do now is glue these to the side of our house, and I've just used a glue stick for this, as you can see, but you could use hot glue if you prefer. And there you go. Now that the chimney's in place, we can now make a start on the roof. Okay, so for this, we'll take the roof tile texture and glue that to some thin corrugated cardboard, or some thick regular cardboard. Thick cardboard is probably the better option if you have it, but either will do. Anyway, there you go. Right then, for this next part, we'll need to measure out how big a roof section we'll need, and obviously, the size is going to vary depending on how big a house you've built, but I like to have it so that it overhangs the sides by around 1/8 of an inch or so. So, here's a piece that I cut to size earlier. However, as you can see here, if we've added a chimney to our building, we're going to need to cut out a little notch so that the roof can go around it. So, I'll just quickly measure that out now, and also cut it out. And with any luck, that should now slide nicely into place. Which it does. Now, this next part is optional, but if you like, you can take a sharp knife and cut out the little V-shaped grooves between each of the roof tiles, just to add a bit more detail. So, I'll just skip ahead for this part, as it's not all that interesting to watch, but when we're done, it should look something like that. Now, obviously, we'll need 2 of these. One for each side, and I'll just quickly check to see if they fit nicely, and as it happens, I actually need to trim a bit more off this piece, and then, once we're happy, we can apply some hot glue to the top of our little building, and glue on one of the roof sections. So that's the first piece done, and now for the other one. And there we go, that's the roof glued into place. Now, all that's left to do is to cover up this join. So, for this final step, we're going to take an empty toilet roll tube and unravel it so that we don't have any of those annoying joins. And on top of this, we're going to glue some of this texture here, so I'll just quickly go ahead and do that. There we go. Then, while it's still wet, we'll wrap that around a pen or similar, just to accentuate the curve of the tube. Right then, once that's dry, we can cut one of the pieces to size, so something like this. And then we're going to try and roll this into a tight curve, first by rolling it around a pen, and then a barbecue skewer, so that it's similar in shape to half a drinking straw, if that makes sense. And we will, of course, do the same thing for the rest of the pieces. Then, all we're going to do is dry fit a couple of these on top of the roof, and in this instance I needed to trim away a tiny piece from one end just to make it fit nicely. So there we go, that's what we're aiming for. Next, we'll need to fill the underside of one of these pieces with hot glue, and I really am putting quite a bit of glue in there, so that when I place it back on top of the roof, the glue should run down from inside this piece and secure it in place. Though you might need to hold this down for a while you're waiting for this to happen, but when it does stick, it should give you a nice clean bond. So I'll just do the exact same thing for the other piece. And that's pretty much it. That's our little building finished. However, I do just want to quickly point out that I've also included an alternative chimney piece, which can be used if you want a chimney in the middle of a building. So, you can use it as it is if you want it to span both sides of the roof, or you can trim it to the angle shown here to make this kind of piece. And that can be glued pretty much anywhere you like. And while I'm at it, I'll also say that I've gone with a pretty shallow angle for these roofs, and the reason for this is if we take a miniature and place it on top, it has a good chance of not sliding off. So I have sacrificed a bit of realism for the sake of playability. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, so here's a picture of a few things that I've put together, and you can also make little lean-tos, like these pieces here. Here's a close-up of one of those, and I've kept these as separate pieces so that they can be placed alongside any building, just to make them a bit more modular. So yeah, I'm quite happy with how these look, and as you can see, we should be able to make quite a variety of different buildings with these, though admittedly I might need to work on a few more textures, you know, maybe a thatched roof, wooden shingles, slate tiles, and that kind of thing, just for a bit more variety. So let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. Anyway, as always, thank you very much for watching. Now I just need to figure out a way to combine these with the building interiors, but that can be another video, so I'll stop talking now. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.